Welcome to the Lock Shop with Nielsen and Hustler, powered by Coolbet Canada.
It's 11 o'clock. Welcome inside the Lock Shop. Dusty with you right now. Hus is going to be sliding in right away. Quiet night in the NHL. We got lots to get to, actually, from the NHL last night. As we mentioned a number of times, now that we've gone to the daily live format, Hus and I have a lot more time to dive into stories instead of just sliding in here and banging out winner after winner after winner. So we can get into that. It was a good day for the Edmonton Sports Talk parlay yesterday. As, man, we had a crowd here. We were doing our little mixer last night, Hus, and Draisaitl scores early, and a bunch of us were on that. One guy here had him for first goal score, so he was like in heaven. So, and then Bouchard had an assist later, and we needed a Bouchard point, and the Oilers to win by 2. So we had it locked on cruise control, watching them roll to a victory. Little party with our clients last night. It couldn't have been any better, bud. Couldn't have been better night.
Well, it could have been better. The Canucks could have won.
Yes. Screw the Canucks, eh?
That is the one thing. And, you know, we had those 4 games, and we settled on Vancouver. Well, Vancouver was one of our first picks, and we were thinking Vancouver, Edmonton, and then do we go Minnesota? Do we go Canes, puck line? But it ended up being the Canucks. And how weird is that? They score 8 on Edmonton and then get shut out by Philly.
It makes no sense. It makes no sense.
But I'll tell you what, it was the opposite here in Winnipeg.
Yeah, tell me about it, man.
Like, I mean, we had the parlay, the big revenge game against Dubois, and Velarde, who has been so good early on playing with Scheifele and Connor, gets twisted up and taken down, and his knee went in a direction that was ugly. He didn't return to the game. We'll get hopefully some sort of an update at some point today. But that really took, I mean, I don't want to say it took the life out of the team, but I think there was certainly an effect. First of all, they had to juggle the lines over and over again and never really got going. Jets had a great first period, could have scored 2 or 3, didn't. And then we saw the LA Kings step up and show, I mean, a lot of what Vegas did last year in the playoffs. I mean, they really took that game over. That 1-3-1 was an absolute bitch for the team to get through. So yeah, it was tough. It was a small crowd. That's concerning to a lot of people. There was a lot of good vibes from the first couple games, but last night was, I think, a bit of a reality check for a lot of people here, and in a number of different ways. But man, if Velarde's out, I'll say one thing. I know there'd been some whispers out there that maybe the Jets would have been in on Connor Garland. And I'm not sure that was really the case the week before, the way the team looked.
But now it might be.
Yeah. Well, if we find out that Velarde's out for a few months, that's a massive hole in the lineup right now. And it doesn't really seem that there's anybody. Well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, there is a bunch of young players that have had great starts with the Moose. But, I mean, the plan is for those young men to play there. And I'm not sure that they're ready for that jump up right away. David Gustafson's going to come into the Jet lineup. It'll move up. Kapari's looked really good so far. Nemetsnikov's really versatile. But, yeah, it wasn't quite the good vibes of the first couple games, and certainly the home opener on the winner. But I imagine people in Edmonton are sort of able to breathe now that the Oil have got in. And by the way, thanks to the Oilers, 2-0 on the daily pick so far this week. That's rode nice with them it was just easy. I mean, we could have jumped on a bunch of the props, which obviously hit too, but that just seemed like that was a game, much like the Florida Panthers 0-2 going into Jersey on Monday night. Just kind of felt that team was going to get away from home, get on track. And who do they play next? They've got another road game this week.
Philly. They're in Philly,
and then back for Winnipeg on Saturday.
And then back for Winnipeg on Saturday, then on the road in Minnesota on Tuesday. So, yeah, it's not a difficult schedule. There's lots of rest here for the Oilers right now. So they'll have 2 games, 2 days off after the Winnipeg game. So, yeah, they're in a pretty good spot. I mean, last night's game, you know how the roller coaster is. The same thing in Winnipeg as it here at Edmonton. It was, like, absolutely disastrous. And then last night, there's 2 things that really stood out for the win. Like McDavid and Draisaitl are going to get there, as we know that. Leon Draisaitl, 4 points last night, leads the league in scoring with 7 points. Power play, pretty good. But Jack Campbell was really good last night. Like in that first start, when they were just standing around and gave up 8, they pulled him after 4. And it really was more of like a mercy pull to try to get the team going. Like he didn't play that bad in that first start. So they went to him last night. He was outstanding. One of the best games I think he's played as an Edmonton Oiler. And then they did put McDavid and Draisaitl together. And whenever they put McDavid and Draisaitl together, the concern is not that McDavid and Draisaitl doesn't work. It always works. But the concern is, can you get something else from the lineup? And they did last night. The line of Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Zach Hyman, and Warren Foegele, of all people, actually was really good in last night's hockey game. Now, it's against Nashville. Nashville's forward group is, I think, significantly weaker than it has been over the last couple of years. But still, they managed to get it done, and now they go in to take on a Philly team that's coming in off that shutout of the Vancouver Canucks. So it'll be interesting to see where the lines come out on that one. But a positive spin. The parade's back on, Hus, and everybody's very excited about the Edmonton Oilers right now.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to seeing the Oil and Jets get going on Saturday night. I'll be there. If any lock shoppers are there at the game, say what's up.
I saw your guy. Check out the water. I'm actually drinking right now. That's Damon Bunting water. That's Bunting. You're going to the game with him, right? So
the man, the myth, the legend.
He was here last night for the client party, and he brought a bunch of water for the boys. So
beautiful.
Very responsible man. You're going to the game with us.
God, he looks good on that bottle of water.
He does look good. Hey, you would have never known that you almost led him astray when you worked together back in the day.
No, and it's going to be actually really fun because we're basically getting together the ticket sales pit from Edmonton circa 2000 for the game on the weekend. Elmo and who I know is a big listener of the Nielsen show popping in, and our old pal Bruiser, and I think Sean Price is going to come. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing some of the old fellas and hopefully seeing a good game. And I haven't been to the rink yet. I haven't been to the new rink yet. So
you'll like it. It's good, buddy. You'll like it. It's nice.
Yeah,
it's good. Hey, I have to know because I think it was McIntyre. McIntyre's on your show regularly, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So he pointed out the attendance last night, and I was asked about it on our show today, and we'll just get into it. This is heavily an Edmonton and Winnipeg show, obviously, the Lock Shop. And only 2 games in the NHL tonight. We'll get to that. We got to talk some baseball, I think, here as the ALCS and NLCS continue on. CFL lines are out. 3 big numbers is what we're looking at this weekend. And I think there's an interesting discussion to have there. We can kind of hit on that a little bit. But the attendance, I know we were talking about the 13,000, and then you sent, Pierre-Luc Dubois. Why would you not want to be? Then I think it was 11,000, like the lowest attendance since the Jets came back here. Is it, I don't know, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how alarming is it that we're seeing these numbers right now?
That's a 10.
It's a 10, eh? 11,000 is a 10.
To me, that was a 10. I mean, like, listen, we were focused in on the game, and obviously they didn't score till the end. There was a lot of things that wasn't going that way. But, I mean, as someone that has lived in that building since it opened, that has been a season ticket holder since day one, that, has kind of seen what they've had to go through over the last 5 years or whatever with COVID and the team and all that. We knew that there was sort of a big push this offseason to buy tickets. And I won't get too much into it, but there was a campaign that, that very subtly basically said, we need to get back to 13 season tickets, or the viability of this franchise isn't guaranteed long term. And a lot of people really pushed back on that. I think they sort of pulled it back a little bit, but the message is true. They've got a ton of work to do. I mean, they need to basically bang out another 2,000 season tickets and get that thing up. I mean, the 13.7 or whatever it was is that a great number for a home opener? No. But I mean, there is an element of a new reality, Dusty. And I mean, I don't know what things are like in Edmonton, but I can tell you here in Winnipeg, which is by far the smallest market, I mean, it really took everybody on board early on to to make this team, what it was, and the building what it was, and the atmosphere. And, through the pandemic, through, the economy, there's a lot of people that just simply don't have that same level of disposable income, shall we say. And unfortunately, the hockey team's taken a really big hit. So all I can say is, yeah, it was, as far as crowds go in the 13 years that this team's back, that was, it was shocking, to be honest. And And I think all this was a massive wake-up call for, I mean, everybody involved. Well, no matter what you're a stakeholder, if you work for the club, if you're part of the organization, if you're just simply a fan, if you're a season ticket holder, if you're a corporate sponsor, if you're a Winnipeg business. And listen, I don't have enough knowledge about what they actually did, how they went about it, what the campaign was. Because to me, and this sort of goes back to working with the boys back in Edmonton, kind of how I got my start.
Yeah.
A lot of that stuff is done on a one-on-one basis. I mean, you're talking to people and you're like, so much of it now is digital. Go on, buy your stuff. Like, I don't know whether they've lost that personal connection with a lot of their stakeholders or the ones that they lost. But the bottom line was when the drive to 13,000 happened in 2011, almost all of the tickets were bought. I mean, they did it in the fairest way. It was just bang, here you go. Whoever gets the seats gets the seats. So over 80% of the tickets were groups of fans that were together. Yeah, we'd have 4 people in our seats. We'd have 8 people, and they split
They
it
do
all
the draft for tickets and stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I mean, listen, that is truly the way things will, have to be in a market like this. However, it was the smallest percentage of corporate money in the entire NHL. And for whatever reason, I mean, sometimes it's tougher to keep a group of 8 or 10 or 6 or 4 together based on people moving or different situations. And so when those went down, they haven't been able to kind of refill that up. So I don't know. It was a great story for a long time. I mean, again, and we're going to talk about this on WST today. I mean, it's pretty much unavoidable at this point. You feel nervous because this, I hate to say it to people in Winnipeg that are listening, but people need to hear it. This is a very similar timeline to Jets 1.0.
And you're seeing the similarities, say, like that's where somebody was joking today on our show. They're like, well, actually, it was Pat Gregoire. He was on this morning for us, and he goes, we'll probably talk about it with Hus at some point, but like at what point do you start to say, wait a second, what's happening here? And I mean, maybe not yet, but this time next year, if numbers are the same, right, Hus? Like,
oh well, I mean, listen,
man, that
it's
would
not
just
like
suck. That would
not
suck.
like they've got one foot out the door, but at a certain point, they need to exhaust everything and see whether, I mean, this city is still, I mean, an NHL city with NHL support. And
what about the NHL though, justifying Arizona rolling 5,000 for 3 years? You know what I mean? Like,
well, the whole thing is, I mean, that, listen, that's another story. And to even be in the conversation with the Coyotes is something that would make the skin crawl, I think, of everybody in the downtown offices. But in all seriousness, I mean, I think, we're talking about a real problem. And I mean, listen, there has been, if you look even the last couple of years, I mean, we've seen erosion of attendance in a lot of other markets. Listen, if you're in one of these massive metro centers, you're fine based on season ticket base. There's always enough people to kind of go to the game and fill out the rest of the seats. But I mean, Edmonton, Calgary, Vancouver, Ottawa, I mean, all of those cities at times over the last year have had some concerning crowds.
Edmonton for sure with the football team right now. I mean, that's a major concern and not what it once was. But even when the Oilers, through that decade of darkness, man, the crowds, the crowds weren't good. I mean, the thing that blows my mind is that like the Jets are a good hockey team. I don't know why you wouldn't want to go watch Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele and Nick Ehlers and Morrissey, like Hellebuck. Like they're a good hockey team. So, and I guess my picture of the Winnipeg sports fan is when I roll into town 6-7 times a year and hit up IG Field, and it's the best sporting atmosphere in the entire bloody country. From coast to coast. It's amazing. So that's why I just look at these numbers. I go, what the hell? Like, I don't get it. I just don't understand it for the life of me.
Yeah. Well, and you know what's interesting you say that is that if you would have told anybody 10 years ago that we'd be sitting here talking about the lowest crowd since in the 2.0 era at a time when the Bombers had sold out 3 straight games.
Yeah.
They would have laughed in your face. The Bombers have done a lot of great things. First of all, build a championship team that's there, week in and week out. They've also done some really, really good things, with their fans. I'll say this. I think they're a much smaller organization. But I'll give Wade Miller a lot of credit with the way that he's run things, with the staff that they have there. They have done a great job of building, keeping their season tickets. And that's, I think, and again, I don't want to get too inside baseball here, but I think the one thing that True North didn't do well was handle the first level of tickets that they lost. It was, they had a waiting list. It was like, no big deal. We'll just keep on filling them. And then I think got to a point where a bunch of them went off, and they, like, the one thing I can tell you, it's 10 times easier to keep a season ticket than it is to go sell a new one. And I can't but help think that there were some mistakes made to not save those initially to sort of get to this point. But I've really felt, in a way, Dusty, that there's been a bit of a reckoning coming here and in pro sports in general. I mean, let's face it, the NHL is a ticket-driven league. They don't have the NHL, the revenue numbers that, the rest of the pro sports world happens. It's all about HRR. You want to pay these guys tons of money and be competitive and all that. The salary cap's going up. Well, that is on the backs of fans that are going to the games for the most part right now. And I think you're just seeing the squeeze on that average fan, maybe more so here in Winnipeg because there's fewer of us than there are in other places right now. So unfortunately, that's probably going to be a topic for the next while here. And certainly for the betterment of, the team, the city, certainly what we're doing every day, we can get that in, because you're right. There is a lot of good things. There's tons of other things around it, though. I think that the biggest eye-opener at all was, frankly, the Western Conference Final in 2018, when that playoff run pretty much bankrupted the city of Winnipeg. Like, honestly, it was so much fun. There was so much going on. But afterwards, you realized how expensive that was, how many games there were. There was a lot of people that had to make tough decisions going forward on things. And to be honest, that might have even cost them some season tickets in the future, just because of what that run did to it. And then, of course, the last game against Vegas wasn't sold out. That was the one game of the entire playoff run that wasn't. And again, once you get to the Western Conference Final, the NHL is setting the ticket prices. They were hundreds and hundreds of dollars.
Get tapped out there, right? Like,
And there was a ton of people that get, I would do anything to be in there. But I unfortunately don't have the scratch that it takes to do that. So it's
Coach Mike texts in here, Hus. Coach Mike texts in 780-218-9999. Just says, what's the cost for a decent seat for a Bombers game?
A Bomber game?
Yeah, for a Bombers game.
Well, you can get in pretty cheap. If you want to get, I'd say the cheapest tickets, if you're in the end zone with the crazies and something like that, we're probably talking in the high 30s to get in. And there might even be, I think they have a social pass that they can sell.
That's so good. That's ridiculous to be in that spot at that stadium.
And then I think you're probably looking at in the, the 50 to 60 range for some of the more reasonable tickets. And then, there are really nice seats. The platinum seat will be over $100 or whatever. And again, here's the other thing. And this is just, there's 9 games in a football season. There's 41 in hockey.
Yeah, big difference.
And here's the one thing, and I say this, and you knew, like, this sort of thing really comes up early in the season every year. And having worked in minor league hockey before, with the Moose, you'd work so hard for your home opener. And then you get up to the next part of your schedule and you realize that, holy smokes, we got all these games to sell. And if you don't have the scarcity of the ticket, which is unfortunately something that they've lost, and that might be the key to all of it. And well, I'm going to go to a few games this year, but am I going to go on a Tuesday night in the middle of October in the first week, or am I going to save it for a little later on? If you have those choices, people will do that, and they will oftentimes stay away. Whereas if you're building sold out every night, and to get tickets, you need to be in on a pack of seasons, or you need to have a mini pack or something. You're sort of in at the start of the year and you plan for it. But it's very difficult in a market of this size, but frankly, any size. If you have a big, big group of unsold tickets every night, to expect people just the day of the game to decide, you know what, I'm going to go to the game and go drop 100, 125, 150 or whatever on a couple seats and do the whole thing. So, yeah, big conversation that I know we'll be getting to on today's show as well.
All right, lots to get to. We'll get to football in a second, but just 2 games tonight in the National Hockey League, Huss. Washington Capitals on the road against the Ottawa Senators. Caps plus 147, Dogs on the road against the Sens. And then Pittsburgh minus 130 favorites on the road in Detroit against the Red Wings. The cool bet hotline of the day earlier on today on the Nielsen show was Alexander Ovechkin to get off the schneid and get his first goal of the year. I guess a little bit of a line shuffle. Who was Ovi's going to play with Strome and Tom Wilson, according to Pat Maroon's bib in the chat. So we'll see if Ovi's able to get going. No goals in the first 2 games of the year for him, but super light schedule. You usually see this on a Wednesday coming off a busy Tuesday in the National Hockey League, and Thursdays are usually pretty busy as well. Wednesday's usually a light night, but is there anything you really like from these 2 games?
Well, you know what? I'm pretty high on Ottawa right now, to be honest with you, and I don't know about Washington at all. I guess Spencer Carberry has his work cut out for him with a new team. And, learning the rest of the National Hockey League, I'm sure. I mean, he's obviously is a very experienced guy, not in this particular role before. But when you look at, I'm just going to pull up the Caps lineup here. Strome, Kuznetsov, Backstrom playing on that third line is a little wild. Like, is he just not back? I mean,
ramping him back up maybe at this point, like.
Listen, if there's one thing that I would do if I'm trying to get Ovi going, I would just put him with Nick Backstrom. I mean, these guys have been playing together forever. It seems relatively simple. But I'll say this: I kind of like Ottawa, and the thing I like about Ottawa right now is that level of, like, I think they're playing a brand of desperate hockey right out the gate because they know what happens in that Eastern Conference if they don't get out of the gate with a good start. Like the last few years, they've been playing catch up. And I mean, if you're 6, 7, 8 points out, when you get into December, it makes it almost impossible, barring a Hamburglar type run of whatever year that is, to make the playoffs. So I think Ottawa is going to be, I think they're a more deep team. I think there's a lot more belief there. I think they are better, but I think they're also playing with a level of urgency in that market that frankly, you don't see in a lot of other teams. Now, Washington, for their part, missed the damn playoffs last year. So I think they should know as much as anyone what happens if you don't, get off to that good start and start banking those points. So it should be a good game. Like, I'd lean Ottawa. I'll be honest. At minus 175, I'm a little surprised that number is where it is. But to me, it's pretty clear that I think that the bookmakers are down on the Capitals, who did, sneak out that comeback shootout win over Calgary for their 1 win of the season, and I think are a lot higher on the Ottawa Senators. The other game to me is a lot more interesting, though. I mean, just, you got a much tighter line.
Yeah.
And the Pittsburgh Penguins, after that ugly start, going into Detroit, and Detroit coming off a big, nice team win, 4-0 clean sheet on Monday against the Columbus Blue Jackets. But as I say, we talked about that level of desperation to get off to a good start and make things happen now. I think Pittsburgh's feeling that as well, because there is so much that's on the line for the Pittsburgh Penguins this year. When you think of the commitment they made to Erik Karlsson, this is what they've got, sort of a last run with this run of superstars. And they incredibly lost in the playoffs last year. And maybe that Chicago game to start off the season, Dusty, was maybe a good thing that happened to them, because it put them right back to where they were, realizing that they absolutely need to be a team that brings it and is a heck of a lot more consistent. And I think they've done a pretty good job bouncing back after that disappointing opening night to Bedard and the Blackhawks, with wins over the Capitals and most recently at home over the Calgary Flames 5-2.
Yeah, if you're watching right now or you're listening, 780-218-9999, or you can hit us up in the nasty chat as well with the two games tonight. Ottawa -175 at home against the Washington Capitals. Detroit +110 at home against the Pittsburgh Penguins. If you have anything that you like from those games, let us know. Feel free to chime in on that one. Ottawa at -175 does say, like you laid it out, Ottawa at home is a -175 favorite, saying a lot of things about the Washington Capitals right now. And we'll see. Washington, can they do? It's just an interesting night seeing Washington and Pittsburgh here. You'll have Ovi and Sid both on the ice tonight, and teams that are trying to hang on, but Pittsburgh seeming a little bit more committed to do it, I guess.
What are your, listen, I think I'm leaning. I got to do the play of the day right now. We're 2-0 this week. I want to keep it going. I'm leaning towards just going with Pittsburgh to win on the road. What are your thoughts on Detroit? Like, so far this season, they lost at New Jersey 4-3. Jersey's a real good team.
Yep.
Then they beat the Lightning at home 6-4 and beat the Blue Jackets 4-0. And they're a team that's very much in a similar situation as Ottawa and Buffalo. I mean, they know that they're all part of those teams that are scratching and clawing and trying to get into a playoff spot. They know how long the season is, but they know that they can't fall behind. Like, I'll be honest, of those three teams, if you ranked most likely to get into the playoffs, I kind of had a gap between Buffalo and Ottawa, who I was higher on than Detroit. And I mean, I haven't seen a lot of them so far this year, but they're scoring some goals. They had a nice win there against Tampa. And then to be able to go in, and I know Columbus is sort of a rebuilding team, maybe not where a lot of the other ones is, but, build on that Tampa win with a shutout win on the road. To me, this is a huge test for Detroit to see if they can keep that going against another team that they're going to have to beat if they want to be a playoff team.
Yeah, a little bit upgrade over the team that they just played. I like what I've seen from Detroit so far this season. I think Pittsburgh is probably the play here. I think Tristan Jarry's starting tonight, and he's 1-1. And in his two games, it's like he's got like a 1.44 goals against average. He's had a nice start to the year. We've seen him put together some pretty nice years in Pittsburgh already. So I think I probably lean to Pittsburgh, but Detroit as a plus money home dog is a pretty good spot for Detroit this year. As a plus, I think Detroit's got to the point here now where they're going to be favored in a lot of their home games. So to see them as a plus money dog, considering that they've won a couple here in a row, I don't hate that, but I think Tristan Jarry would be the deciding factor for me, and I'd probably lean with you on the Penguins.
It's just looking at some of the props for this game. Crosby and Gensel basically. Well, Crosby's +143 to score. Jake Gensel's +144. Larkin and DeBrincat are the top two numbers from the Detroit side of things. +162 for Dylan Larkin. +185 for DeBrincat. I should check out. I'm sure DeBrincat's probably getting some a nice spot. Yeah, playing with Larkin and Raymond on that top line, and on the right side on that first power play unit. So, I mean, DeBrincat, maybe we jump on something like that. And then, of course, player points. Deep numbers, Crosby -218. He's off to a nice start. If anything, you're trying to see. I could see this being a low-scoring game, though. I could see this game being one of those 2-1, 3-2 games. And at that point, if you want to get aggressive, maybe you take a swing at a few of these under 5 point, like under 0.5 points, guys to not get a point. Because those numbers are actually pretty high when you look at how often guys don't get points in a single game in the National Hockey League. But mainly we're looking kind of the usual suspects that are going to get big opportunities that'll get all the power play time. So it is a little bit different. But yeah, I'm leaning towards Pittsburgh tonight. I think the best thing that they could possibly do is get on a bit of a run after that thud to start the season when they kind of embarrassed themselves, much like they finished the season last year losing to the Chicago Blackhawks.
One more player prop that I'll throw out there in that Pittsburgh game would be, I think it's -108, Brian Rust point. Playing on the wing with Sidney Crosby. He's got 3 goals in 3 games so far this year. He's playing over 18 minutes a night. And when you look at the list of guys, he's like, how far down is he? There's 10 guys in this game that have better odds to get a point than Brian Rust. So I don't mind Rust at minus 107 to get a point tonight. I just kind of got in on that one a little bit. I think that might be my favorite player prop from that game. And
Rust
we'll
is
see.
Rust is funny. I picked him up free agent in fantasy. I'm like, how is this guy just kicking around? And the rankings aren't that good. And yet there he is. I mean, he's probably, if staying healthy, he's probably a lock to score 25 to 30 playing with Sidney Crosby.
Yeah. I mean,
And
he's 3 for 3 right now, right? So
it has a lot of trust in him right now. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, that is actually a good one. I'll lock in either that one or the Penguins money line for the cool bet play of the day. We'll throw that out later on.
Let's go to Major League Baseball. Then we'll get into Nathan Rourke got elevated to the 53-man roster for the Jags, so we can discuss that, kind of dive into that. CFL lines are out. We'll hit on that as well. But Hus, anything moving the needle with you on Major League Baseball tonight? Texas and Houston. Obviously, Texas has been unbelievable, essentially unbeatable so far. They're minus 130 home favorites here against the Astros tonight, who really need this one and come in as a plus 115 dog.
I got to take the underdog Astros here. I mean, I know Texas has been on an absolutely phenomenal run, although I guess Scherzer's going to get the start. I mean, we thought that he was probably going to be done for the year. He hasn't been great, though. He's been up and down so far this season. And the fact that he hasn't pitched in the better part of a month and a half, and you got Javier on the hill for the Astros, who's 1-0 without an earned run against so far. I mean, to me, I just think that this Astros team is way too good to end up going down 3-0. And to be honest, maybe that'll be the play of the day today. Maybe we'll go to the diamond for that one because, at plus 115, I think you're getting a good number. I mean, if you took out what had happened at the start of the season or at the start of this series, and again, that's maybe difficult to do, but things do change from game to game. I still like the Astros more than I did the Rangers. And here's the other thing. The Astros have that playoff pedigree, which the Rangers don't. They've been in this situation before. They've got a lot of veteran players that know the challenge right now. So yeah, I'm on the Astros tonight to get this to get back into the series. And if they can win this one, they'll have a chance to make it a 2-2 series in game number 4. But this is a gotta have it game, right? I mean, you lose, you're down 3-0, and you're basically done.
Yeah, I mean, they there's no room for error now. I mean, it's highly, highly, highly unlikely you're going to come back in this series if you lose tonight. One player prop that I do like in this game, and it's basically playing a trend, and with how important it is for Houston, I'm going to get on Alvarez over 1.5 total bases at plus 135. I don't know why it's still sitting at plus 135 because he's gone over 1.5 total bases in 5 of the 6 playoff games so far, and you're still getting it at plus 135. So that's my favorite play from this ball game tonight. I can't bet against Creed and the Texas Rangers. I just can't do it. It's not allowed as the Canada's main promoter of Creed. I can't do that. But Alvarez over 1.5 total bases at plus 135 is a play that I like.
By the way, how are you handling the new digital space with things like Creed?
It's tough.
With you not being able to play it on YouTube.
It's tough. We're playing our goal song still. There's a fair right thing for parody songs. So the plan is to write 1 or 2 Creed parody songs, and then that is how Creed Tuesday will continue. Mind you, we're dabbling in some other stuff. There's a few things on the go here that might lead to a resurgence of Creed at some point. So give us time, Hus. This will not die. I mean, yesterday, first of all, a huge shout out to the Rangers for making Creed a thing, obviously. But then,
have they brought Creed back?
Well, we brought Creed back. Creed never left, Hus. You got to realize this. But then Kirk Cousins, the Vikings, played Creed, listened to Creed in the room before they went out. And they went out and won a game.
So. For sure, Kirk Cousins is a big Creed guy. Kirk
Cousins is the least NFL-looking player of all time. We were looking at his post game yesterday when he was talking about Creed, or 2 days ago, and he's wearing a button-up brown shirt. His hair's done nicely. He just doesn't fit. He mentioned that they listened to Creed on the boombox. I was just like, oh my God, you're the biggest nerd of all time, Kirk Cousins. But I love you. I just can't bet against Creed.
That's what made that video last year when he had the shirt off and all the chains doing the thing. I mean, and that quarterback series really, I think, humanized him in a way that made him a lot of fans. but I'm not surprised that he's a big Creed guy, to be perfectly honest with you. I'd love to know what percentage of the nasties out there, like gun to their head, truly supported Creed Tuesday or just sort of tolerated it for whatever reason why you guys continue to do it all along. That would be a heck of a
That's a big
question of
poll.
the day.
That's a big poll right there. Yeah, we'll see when I start dropping Creed parodies on them. We'll see what they think. Okay, let's slide over to the NFL because yesterday, remember we were talking about this Jags Saints line? It was 3 for the Thursday nighter. The Jags are now 1-point underdogs, and this is in the process of adding Nathan Rourke to the 53-man, which would make you think that something's going on with Trevor Lawrence, but the line has still moved the other way. So I'm slightly confused by this. I am going to check right now to see if there's any sort of update on Trevor Lawrence. And if you're watching right now or you're listening and you know of an update on Trevor Lawrence, fire it over because I'm not surprised it moved if obviously Lawrence is going to be playing, but the fact that they've added Rourke to the 53-man kind of makes me hesitant a bit.
And just speaking of Rourke for a minute, if Rourke's on the 53-man, and let's just say for a minute that Trevor Lawrence can't play, I guess kind of out of respect for Beathard, who's been their backup the whole time, I'm sure he probably gets the start. But I would have to think that Doug Peterson, after what he saw in the preseason, will be a heck of a lot quicker to go to Nathan Rourke in this game as another coach or quarterback might be in theirs. I mean, you think about Cleveland, when they lost to Deshaun Watson, they went to their backup. He wasn't very good. Boom. Next up, PJ Walker. So if Trevor Lawrence doesn't play, I will be on the Saints anyways. But
he says he is optimistic to play. So
I think that's why we're seeing Jags at +1. But what is the injury?
I believe it's one of his legs. I don't know if it's his. He had a knee brace on, so it's one of his knees. Left knee. I'm just looking at the video right now. It's his left. He's got actually. This was yesterday at practice. Pretty significant brace on the left knee, but seems to be moving relatively well. So, yeah.
Well, that's going to be one. I would not suggest anyone do anything on that game right now, unless you are locked in on Jacksonville and you're going to take the point right now. I guess maybe the time to do that would have been yesterday when it was +3. But I think we really need a little bit more clarity on this game, and we'll probably get to that at some point tomorrow as we get closer to kick off and actually get some inactives throughout there.
Quickly on the what's that?
I was just going to say, we do have CFL lines out.
Yeah, we'll get to those. I just want to get to these messages in the chat. Tuna Melt says, I hate Creed Tuesday. Dr. Gonzo says, I am nothing without Creed Tuesday. And Christopher Morris says, absolutely love Creed Tuesday. So 66% of people love Creed Tuesday, Hus. It's in the numbers. It's in the numbers right there. CFL lines, 3 huge lines, 3 big-time numbers this week in the Canadian Football League, Hus. And it's interesting because if you look at it right now, BC, if they're holding out any hope, got to have it. Stamps, got to have it. Argos, doesn't matter. Riders, got to have it. Edmonton, doesn't matter. Winnipeg, basically secure things. Not that they pretty much haven't already, but I don't know. You got 8.5 in Calgary, BC. Calgary at 8.5, road dog. The Argos, 9-point favorites on the road in the Riders, and then the Bombers 11-point favorites at home against Edmonton. And we usually do our CFL picks on Thursday. But what's your early thoughts on these big numbers, buddy?
Well, huge number. Well, let me ask you this before we get into this Bomber Elks game. Like, what's the status of the Elks? Like, are they going to be like they're eliminated now? Is it just a matter of trying to win games and improve? Are they going to be Chris Jones is a bit of a mad scientist, especially when it comes to personnel. And if they're already in next year mode, part of me thinks that Edmonton's going to be running in a bunch of guys that haven't played before, which probably diminishes their chances of winning a game. As far as for the Bombers go, I think they just need to get through this game healthy and win the football game. So I was a little surprised that the number is as big as it is because, as we've talked about, the Edmonton Elks have seemed like a different team, a more competitive team, way more competitive team in the second half of this season than it was earlier. I mean, I was looking ahead to this game wondering, like, if this was a really meaningful game, this isn't going to be like the same Winnipeg-Edmonton matchup. So I would be hesitant on laying that big number for Winnipeg, especially knowing the task at hand is just to win, survive, advance, and earn yourself essentially a bye in that final week of the regular season. Like, what do you expect?
I think the Elks will bring a pretty good effort. I do. I mean, unless they've completely given up on the head coach and they know that, like, maybe he's going to be gone or something. But, last week they started extremely well. Right, they came out. They're up 21-3. It looked really good. Their offense was outstanding. Since Trey Ford took over, they've had. And I'm not putting it on him. They make the change at OC with Jarius Jackson as well. But remember the game against Winnipeg came out, blew up. You're like, oh my God! Like, look at this team right now. Same sort of thing against Montreal. Then they allowed 32 unanswered for the Alouettes to come back and win that football game. They're still full go on offense. Like, it's still Trey Ford. It's still Kevin Brown. It's still Geno Lewis. It's still Kyron Moore. Like, they're still rolling out their big pieces offensively. So I think they're still trying to, just continue to get really important reps for Trey Ford on this spot in the road. It would be good. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, they did start a guy at defensive end last game. Kind of got to look at him. He's been released. They just released Mark McLaurin, who I thought could end up being a player for him. I don't know. He might be one of those situations where they bring him back next year. Defensive side of the ball would concern me a little bit. But if you got Cereza and AC Leonard doing their thing, then, it could still cause some level of issues. So I just don't think Trey Ford and the offense are just going to mail it in. I think a lot of them still have some stuff to prove. So I think to be honest with you, as we take an early look, and we'll dive into it a little bit deeper tomorrow, but I kind of like all three dogs at the big numbers that we're looking at right now.
I certainly think that there's value on Edmonton at plus 11. And here's just one other thing. And listen, I got full confidence in the Bombers. I mean, we're looking forward to that West Final here in Winnipeg in the middle of November. But against some of the bottom feeders of this league, the Bomber defense has, I don't want to say looked a little disinterested, but I mean, well, the perfect example is the way they started against Edmonton, and heck, the Hamilton game a few weeks ago as well. I mean, they're coming off two great performances in two games that they had to have. Well, to be honest, the Toronto performance wasn't that great. I think in a lot of ways, it seemed like the Bomber D was looking at, oh, Chad Kelly's not playing. Oh, this is going to be easy. And then it wasn't. And then they had to come back and win that game after, sort of a not a great first start. When they lock it in, though, they're awesome. I'm just not sure that focus was going to be there for a team that's long since out of the playoffs, knowing that they just have to win. So early lean, I think, is on 11 at that big, big number. As far as Toronto and Saskatchewan goes, the Riders 9-point home dogs in this situation, and they still haven't guaranteed themselves a playoff spot.
Oh, they got to have this, because if not, Calgary wins one game and they're in.
What is the? So does Calgary have the?
Calgary has the tiebreaker.
Series?
Yeah, that's what happened last weekend. Because they split the first two, and then Calgary came back and took the season series, and they've got a game in hand. So, like, the Riders got to have this. Calgary controls their own destiny right now. So the Riders got to have this, and then hope Calgary kind of fades away here. So, huge games for both of those teams, like big time.
And here's something for the Riders that's even more ominous. If the Bombers win this game, they're going to be playing Calgary with absolutely nothing to gain.
Yep.
Like, there's a very good chance it could be Drew Brown in a quarterback. It could.
Oh, that being said, Drew Brown is awesome. Whenever Drew Brown gets an opportunity, he lights it up. So,
yeah, I'm just saying that it could be a team that does not really focused on winning a football game at all. The biggest thing would be if Calgary could go into BC and do something. I don't anticipate that will be the case. But again, we're talking about a big, big number right now. One of these favorites is going to cover, I think. Hopefully it's Toronto, just because I would just make it for great post-game listening for our friends.
The CKRM post-game show, that would be quite the scene. And, I mean, if Toronto rolls in there as 9-point favorites with nothing to play for and crushes the Riders, they might as well announce it right after the game that they're completely cleaning house. I mean, they're probably going to clean house anyway. But I mean, that would be the death blow for that management group. It would have to be.
So this is it. And Calgary has their own destiny in their hands. Calgary's had such a disappointing season, but you know that Dickinson, even if they don't think that they've got a Grey Cup championship level team, Dickinson's been around teams that have snuck into the playoffs and done big things in the postseason. Saskatchewan going absolutely nowhere right now. Although 9 points is such a big number for a home team. And let's not forget they're playing against the Argos, who, when they were in Winnipeg last year, were trying out their second and third string quarterbacks. Yeah. So
there's nothing to play for. Like, the Argos have nothing to play for. If the Riders, with essentially any hope they have on the line, can't cover, we're not even sitting here asking for them to win. If they can't cover 9, then that says a lot about that team. And look, maybe we should think that way for this team. Maybe that's just who the Riders are. But yeah, it's a horrible look. Horrible look.
Well, I guess tomorrow we can lock in those CFL picks, and we should have more information on the Jags and Saints game, and we can kind of make those picks as well. By the way, we always love people coming into the chat and dropping the odd pick. Who was it? Ren Most. First of all, welcome. Gambling show segment. Is this daily? Damn right it's daily. Monday to Friday, folks. Same time. You know where to find us. He's new. He'll gift the chat with a winner. AHL. Bridgeport Islanders at Providence Bruins over 5.5. You're welcome. We'll be paying attention to the AHL scoreboard tonight, Ren. Bring it.
I'm gonna get in on this. So out of nowhere, just rolls in, tries to drop winners on us. I love it. What do we got? I'm going to write this out. Islanders and Bruins?
AHL total winners. You've got it. Yeah. And there it is right now. We've just got on Coolbet right now. They don't have total. They don't have a total. They do have the money line. Bridgeport minus 104 and Providence minus 118. Coming up, what day is today? Okay, that's for Friday. Is the Moose are back at home taking on the Iowa Wild. Actually, Moose have had a nice opening weekend playing against that Calgary team. Some pretty exciting young players over there.
If you click on the plus for that Sound Tigers Bruins game, you can see the total at 5.5 in there.
Oh, nicely done.
So.
Oh, there it is. Okay, yeah. So over minus 122 from Ren Most.
We're gonna ride with the noob.
Let's go 1-0, Ren, and then come back tomorrow.
AHL hockey.
Can be the Mr. Lean of AHL, Ren Most in the locker.
I'm the AHL expert. That's great. We do have some Fantasy Football 5 coming up. We see some Fantasy Football questions in there, so I'll get to those on the Fantasy Football 5. We got a bunch rolling in on the text messages too, 780-218-9999. If you're listening right now, we're about to transition over to the Fantasy Football 5, so send us your questions, 780-218-9999. I've got more trade offers on the team that I'm about to blow up, so that's always fun. I can share those. I'm still hanging around relatively well in Jamie Thomas's league. I'm 3-3 right now, dealing with a few injuries, but I'm trying to grind it out, man.
Oh, I had an absolutely disastrous week last week in that league. I was in, I thought, really good shape coming in, but a very, very pedestrian performance last week, and yeah, now the injuries are. The injuries have been piling up. I've had to drop a couple guys. Obviously, Chubb's out. Oh, and Deebo Samuel, that's the worst thing. I'm going to have to wait for him and make a decision on Sunday because he's a Monday night player. I won't really know whether he's active or not. And you got to get that level of confidence in. Do you keep him in your lineup? Or I guess grab a receiver if you can from Minnesota or San Francisco to take his place and put in if he doesn't go. But that Niner game, just quickly, I know because there's a lot of people around here, they're going to be heading down to the Twin Cities for it. Samuel, McCaffrey. It doesn't sound like any of those injuries are long-term injuries.
Yeah, that looks good.
Potentially go. But you do wonder whether San Francisco plays those guys or gives them a little bit more time considering where they are. That being said, I think they probably were more likely to do that if they beat the Browns last week. But with that loss, I think wanting to stay at 5-1, tied with those other teams. I mean, you don't want to be playing catch up, especially as we've talked about with Detroit's schedule.
It's coming up on Winnipeg Sports Talk, buddy.
Well, Murat Atesh is going to jump on. I mean, lots of aftermath to get to from last night, on the ice, off the ice. I mean, that I think will be the big topic. Ted Wyman's out of Bomber practice. He's going to jump on a little later on. So we'll get to all of that coming up, and kind of a little bit more on the lines with our friends at CoolBet. So it should be a good show coming up in about 10 minutes. So join us, Winnipeg Sports Talk over on YouTube, and we'll see you then, and we'll see you tomorrow for some CFL picks, Thursday nighter, and more than 2 hockey games to talk about today in the Lock.
Busy slate tomorrow, all over the card, so that'll be fun. For Hus, I'm Nielsen. That's going to do it for the Lock Shop. Stick around here on EdmontonSportsTalk.com. Oil Stream coming up in about 10 minutes, and Fantasy Football 5 is going to begin right now. All right, let's go. It is the Fantasy Football 5 brought to you by Century Casino on Fort Road, the sports bar and lounge of Century Casino, our NFL partner all season long, exclusively with Edmonton Sports Talk. Get ready to make plans. Join Eric on Mondays and Thursdays. This Thursday, go join him to watch the investment. Trevor Lawrence, if he's good to go, take on the Saints. As we mentioned earlier, that line moving from 3 to 1 already, so money coming in on the Jags. I actually have, I think, a Calvin Ridley question that's rolled in. This is good. We've got a lot of questions today. I got some trades sitting around. We got a real nice Fantasy Football 5. In fact, this might end up being the Fantasy Football 10. So if you have any questions, hit us up in the Nasty Chat, or, of course, at 780-218-9999, and let's get to a few of those right now. Oil Fan Dan is in at 780-218-9999 and says, would you trade Tony Pollard for Mostert? I'm 6-0 in the league. PPR. Well, PPR keeper league. Mostert gets less touches, but is more efficient with his touches. But Tony Pollard gets way more touches, including receiving. What do I do? Oil Fan Dan, I understand where you're coming from on this one. But in a keeper league, I'm not trading Tony Pollard for Raheem Mostert. I just can't do it. I mean, once A-Chain returns, it's going to be more of a split there anyway. You just said it yourself. Like, Mostert is taking advantage of taking significant advantage of the touches that he's getting in an offense that is absolutely lights out. But in a keeper league, I don't think you can trade Tony Pollard for Raheem Mostert. I wouldn't do it, man. I would hang on to Tony Pollard in a keeper league. I had a good question about where's that one with the Jags? There's a few in here. I'm going to have to, I'll reload the inbox and we'll grab a couple of those. I did have some that rolled in over here as well. 3A in the Nasty Chat fantasy question. I'm being offered either Garrett Wilson or Calvin Ridley for Jahmyr Gibbs. I'm in a half-point PPR Superflex league, and my running backs I have include Alvin Kamara. B. Robinson doesn't help, E3. We got to, that could be Bijan Robinson or Brian Robinson Jr., and then Rashawn Johnson and A-Chain, who's on the IR right now. I would like to know who you got for receiver. Like, do you need Garrett Wilson or do you need Calvin Ridley? Both guys who were drafted much higher than where we would value them right now. David Montgomery's going to be out a little bit. I picked up Craig Reynolds in one of my leagues today. And unfortunately, because I've got David Montgomery out, I've got A-Chain out in that league, I'm probably starting Reynolds in it. I ended up giving up like 25 of my 100% fab. I still had it all, so I didn't mind sprinkling a little bit more of it. And it's good because he's one of the handcuffs that you would need for Montgomery. So I didn't mind throwing that out there. Yeah, let me know if you're still watching. Who are your receivers? I need to know who your receivers are before we can make an official call on that one. Big Uke on the text line, 780-218-9999. Got to play 3 of 4. Who sits? Devontae Smith versus Miami, Rice versus the Chargers, Myers versus the Bears, or Wan'Dale Robinson versus the Commanders. You're starting Smith. You're starting Myers. I'm going to probably say Rice, because I'm going to say you roll with Rice as well versus the Chargers. Chiefs games usually end up being pretty entertaining. Like, they usually open things up a little bit. If I recall, like off the top of my head, I'm pretty sure I've watched a few really exciting, high-scoring Chargers Chiefs games over the last few years. So let's get Rice involved there. So I guess I'd sit Wan'Dale Robinson, and that part of that has to do with Wan'Dale Robinson has infuriated me a few times from a fantasy perspective over the last little while. So that's one that you can look at. If you have any questions, send me up in the nasty chat. I've got a couple of trade offers in one of my leagues. I want to run these by you. Well, this one came in one of our leagues that I'm in, actually, with Mr. Lean over there in the corner. They're offering me, it's a keeper league. We keep 5 keepers. I'm getting offered DJ Chark, who's on a bye this week. But whatever, this is that team I'm 1-5 in. It's been a disastrous season. I'm getting offered DJ Chark, T. Higgins, and a second rounder for Aaron Jones and Brandon Ayuk. And I mean, DJ Chark's a nothing burger. I don't care about DJ Chark in any way. I do have a soft spot for T. Higgins, and I don't mind the second round pick that's being offered up. But I know in a heartbeat I can get a first rounder plus for Aaron Jones in this league. And Brandon Ayuk has been outproducing T. Higgins this year anyway. So am I moving Aaron Jones for a second rounder in DJ Chark? Hell no. So that's probably not going to work. Now, I also did send out an offer to somebody that I knew they weren't going to accept. But I threw it out anyway, because this is an interesting spot in this league this year, because I think there's like 4 or 5 teams that are just absolute trash in this 16-team league this year. And then there's just a couple middle of the Packers, and then there's like 6 or 7 teams that probably view themselves as legitimate contenders. Now, the other teams that are absolute trash, not all of them, but I feel like I got more to work with from a trade perspective than these other guys. So I'm going to try to drive that bargain up a little bit and see if I can cash a few of those. It's not greasy. That's just how you do business. That's just how you do business in fantasy. You want to try to get the most out of it, and go with it from that side of it. I think it'll probably end up working out for the better. And I had one more text kicking around here, and I can't find it right now. It's driving me nuts. But anyway, thank you for sending in those other ones. And if you have any other questions, feel free, slide into my DMs. Actually, I had one in my DMs that came in. I think we might have hit this on the Nielsen show today, but let's circle back around to it just in case he is a Fantasy Football 5 listener. What a nice DM here from DJ on Twitter. Hey, man, hope you're well. How nice is that? Of course I'm going to answer this guy's question. He starts like that. It's great. I have a dynasty question. I have Hurts, Lawrence, and Deshaun Watson. A guy offered me Waddle for Deshaun. My 2 main receivers are Ridley and Devonta Smith. Would you move a quarterback in a 2 QB super flex league or hold out for more? And I would. Now, I am extremely frustrated with Deshaun Watson because I based a couple of my league strategies this year around a bounce back for him and Amari Cooper. Hasn't happened. So I am very much down on Deshaun Watson. But I would, and I know it's a super flex league, but you already have Hurts and Lawrence. You're starting them every single week. I'm never starting Watson over those guys. So you're starting them every single week. The weeks that they're on bye, there's probably no quarterbacks available in that league. But then hopefully you have depth, and like, for example, start Waddle in the super flex spot if you've got Ridley and Devontae Smith, or start Devonta Smith in the super flex spot. So yes, I would 100% pull the trigger on moving Deshaun Watson for Jalen Waddle in a super flex dynasty question. 100%. Let's get to a couple more. Hey, this one comes in from Redbeard. He'll be in on Friday. That's always a Safeway Liquor. He probably should be working. Oh, he retracted it. It was right there, and he retracted it. I was just going to say he probably should be working, and maybe he didn't want to be seen. Guys, I just swapped up Kareem Hunt for Jalen Warren. I have OBJ on my bench. Should I try and trade him and Chubb for something this year or lock keepers for next season? You're not keeping OBJ ever, so don't worry about that. One of the things I'm looking at in my one league, I've had some interest in one of my running backs, and Nick Chubb is sitting on this guy's IR. If I can turn Aaron Jones into Nick Chubb at a first-round pick, done. Let's pull the trigger on something like that. But, yeah, we'll see. Double 3A says my running back is Bijan Robinson. Yeah. Would have liked to know who the rest of the wide receivers are. But anyway, hit me up, slide in my DMs on Twitter. I'll try to get you an answer on that one. Oh, and Scotty says it was a hockey question. He realized that we were just talking football. Oh, here's the wide receivers. Lockett, A.J. Brown, Michael Thomas, and Wilson. Yeah, you could probably use a receiver. You could probably use a receiver in that league. I'd probably trade. Look, here's the deal with Gibbs. They're just not going to use him the way everybody wanted them to use him in fantasy to start the year. Once Montgomery's back again, he's going to get all the goal line touches. And then even now with Reynolds mixed in with Gibbs, it's not like all of a sudden he's going to become a three down back. So, yeah, I would probably trade Gibbs. I prefer Wilson, but Ridley's sexy because you hope something continues to click with Trevor Lawrence, even though it's not just there so far just yet. In large part due to the fact that Christian Kirk's still a thing. So that's going to do it for the Fantasy Football 5. We'll be setting up your starts and sits for Thursday Night Football tomorrow at 11:50. I'm sure you'll have some questions on that. Remember to always check on who slipped through the waiver wire this week. Maybe there's somebody that you can stash for the following week, so go check that out in all of your leagues. At one point throughout the season, maybe right at the end of the year before we officially transition out of the Fantasy Football 5, I want to rank all of the platforms, all of the apps that you can use, like Sleeper, CBS, Yahoo, ESPN, NFL, because some of them I've come to love, and some of them are complete garbage, and too many of you still have your leagues on those platforms. So we'll do that at some point here throughout the season. On the Fantasy Football 5, brought to you by the Sports Bar and Lounge at Century Casino on Fort Road. If you're listening live right now at Edmonton Sports Talk, make sure you stick around. We've got the oil stream coming up as the Edmonton Oilers pick up their first win of the season. And once again, if you were watching on YouTube, make sure you have the autoplay button turned to on. We will direct you right over to the oil stream. Myself and Tommy Gazzola will get rolling on that in just a matter of moments.